was afraid to be alone with them. I was afraid that I was going to snap and go crazy and hurt them.
And the brain will go, do people do these things? And then it starts worrying about it.
When you focus on them, it turns into a half-a-day project to try to make them go away.
I saw him and I had the knife and I was like, what if I stab my cat? As if that'd be something I would just do without me wanting to do it.
I did all of the neuro-hacking, like the supplements. A lot of them are fake-it-till-you-make-it type programs. When you're driving down the freeway in January with your head out the window because the cold air blowing on your face, stops panic. It looks ridiculous, but...
Did you do that?
I did.
Love that.
Last month was the first month I felt joy. Like, I have not felt joy in 15 years.
I love that.
I'm choking up here.
Me too, man. That really moved me.
Tell yourself that this intrusive thought is not who you are, whether you're thinking of stabbing your cat or harming your kid.
Today I'm sitting down with Adam here. Adam is from Minnesota. He's a father of three, and he's been struggling for quite a long time with anxiety, with panic attacks, intrusive thoughts. And today we're going to talk about Adam's story, Adam's recovery story. Before we start talking about recovery, actually, can you take us back, Adam, to what was life like when anxiety was running the show for you?
I kind of suffered from health anxiety from the get-go. And the struggle with health anxiety is you always think that it's something else. So this kind of all started when I was 28 years old, 44 now. So it's been a long haul. It went from, it's got to be this disease to that disease. And then the doctor clears you and it gets to the point where, you start to feel crazy and like you're looking for that next doctor that's going to say, oh yeah, this is what's wrong with you. But it took quite a while for anxiety itself to spiral into full-blown panic. It was very physical for me. Not so much mental. The mental part of it started probably about 4 years ago. I was driving to work and a panic attack hit me out of nowhere while I was driving. Like, at the time, I didn't know what it was. It was terrifying. Like, I couldn't stand up. The room was spinning. Like, my vision was going dark. I thought I was dying. I pulled over into a gas station parking lot and had a coworker come pick me up, took me to the hospital, and then it started to follow a pattern. At the time it happened, I'd stopped at a gas station, got a breakfast sandwich, and I was eating while driving, and that's when it hit me. So a couple days later, I stopped at the gas station, grabbed this same breakfast sandwich, and in about the same area of the road where I was eating, it hit me again.
Yes.
So I got to the point where like, wow, I wonder if I'm allergic to these breakfast sandwiches or something like
Sure.
What's going on? So over the next year, I just noticed that it always followed a pattern. It was always at certain times of the day. And that's kind of when I started to put together, this is not an allergy. This is not this is panic, because it always followed the patterns. When panic would hit, I would pace. So like 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd get out of bed and I'd walk the house. And and I would talk to myself. So like when we sat down and talked the first time, and we were talking about the anxiety monster, one of the biggest things for me and the turning points was, I named my monster Johnny. But when I actually started talking out loud to him to where my subconscious could hear it, is when everything started to change. I was driving on the freeway and panic started to come on. I would say, it's good to see you again, Johnny.
Yes.
It's okay. I'm safe. I've got this, and you're free to tag along, just sit down there and this is where we're going. So
yeah, how did that attitude change? The change of attitude towards anxiety by kind of visualizing it as a monster, kind of talking back and saying, "Look, this is what we're doing. You're free to tag along if you want to." How did that kind of change your experience, or did it change your experience at all?
It's hard to explain the shift. Like everybody talks about, that switch that you feel when you finally, figure it out, but it almost within minutes just took it right out of my body and put it in the passenger seat. And that's where he sat, and it's one of those things like anxiety, depression, we think our way into it. It's just, and it's not, there is no quick fix. Like you always say, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just, you have to dig and you have to put the work in. It took me years 28 years to get to the point of anxiety, and it took another 10 years to push me into panic. So I always looked for that quick, the magic pill, the quick fix. Like
Yeah.
anxiety is not something that just ever goes away. It's always with you. It just doesn't scare you anymore. It's when you think back to when you're a kid and something startles you, you still have the physical reaction to it,
Yeah.
but within minutes it's gone and you're on with your life. It doesn't spiral and consume my days anymore.
Anxiety or fear is, basic human emotion, isn't it, that we need? Because I know you're a dad, right? If your child would run across the street without looking in all excitement, you as a dad, if you see a car coming, you would run, like you would get that fear response and you get adrenalized, and obviously
Right.
you grab your child from the road. So it's a level of fear is obviously there to protect us. Just when it spirals out of control, this is where it can become a real problem, like it was for yourself. You said you realized you weren't broken, and there's lots of things you've already tried, like the quick fixes. Can you tell us a bit about that? Like, did you feel before you started? Did you feel broken? Did you feel that there was anything wrong with you? And what were some of the things you tried before joining my program?
I did all of the neuro-hacking, like the supplements. Supplements are great, but also the problem with supplements is, for one, they're not regulated, but supplements also can give you physical sensations, which then again feed into the anxiety. And I'm not saying the other programs were bad. I did get some helpful insights out of them. Like a lot of them are fake-it-till-you-make-it type programs. The brain can't tell the difference between what's real and what's not, apparently. So this one program I followed, it said, just smile all the time, whether you're unhappy or not, because there's nerve endings in your face. So your brain can't tell the difference whether you're truly happy or not. So it releases endorphins. So it's like, I tried all those other programs, I tried the supplements, and they never really explained what anxiety was. And, your program was the first one that really truly brought me into understanding, with the loop and how the processes work. And you never promised that this was going to be a week-long thing. You never promised that, you could cure anxiety, because it's not possible. It's a part of us. So that really just helped me, believe that you could be the one to help me through this, instead of, another pill or another, dead end program. I would take breaks from social media, and then I would just work on your program, or I would throw my ear pods in, and I'd find a podcast on YouTube about just people who have successfully beat anxiety. You just pop an earplug in and or your ear pod in and go to work, and your subconscious is always listening. Whether you're tuned into it or not, it's listening.
Yeah.
So like I just really focused on following your program, understanding the loop, listening to other people that have beat anxiety, and it kind of just all came together.
You mentioned that later down the line, when it wasn't as much panic attacks anymore, it kind of turned into more like GAD, or a version of anxiety which was like more constant with intrusive thoughts, right?
Right.
Can you tell us a bit about that? When did you start to experience those intrusive thoughts in your journey?
So I kind of always had them, even when I was younger. But when anxiety got really bad is really when they surfaced and went dark. From what I understand, everybody has intrusive thoughts, but I guess typically you just don't put any, 2 cents into it, whatever. But when anxiety got really bad for me, especially after panic, is when the intrusive thoughts really got bad, and it was always involving, your closest loved ones, the ones that matter to you most, like we talked about the last time, like it always involved my kids. So I was afraid to be alone with them. I was afraid that I was going to snap and go crazy and hurt them. It got to the point where, my youngest sleeps with me. I wouldn't sleep with her anymore. I would, you know, isolate myself to the living room and, try and stay away from them. And, all three of them play hockey. Well, there's a lot of travel involved in that. Well, with them alone in the car with me, the intrusive thoughts would come, I'm going to lose control and drive in the ditch. But that conversation that we had, and you told me that when you're in panic, your senses are you sharper. So nobody in panic ever crashes their car, And I noticed that, like, it's just the subtle things that you notice when it's pointed out to you, when I'm driving and I'm feeling the panic, I started to notice, well, my reflexes are faster. So there's no way I'm going to crash this car because, my muscles are ready to go. They're ready to react,
Yeah.
Like the intrusive thoughts, you told me you don't want to push them away, I look at them, and rather than be afraid of them, what are the facts to this thought? Am I going to go crazy? No. Am I ever going to hurt my children? No. So once you start looking at them that way, they pass really quickly, and then you don't get the anxiety build from them. You don't get the panic from them, Do I still have weird thoughts that pop into my brain at random? Sure. But I look at them for what they are. That's not who I am.
Love that.
If it doesn't serve me any purpose, you give it the 5 seconds, it moves on and you move on. I noticed that with intrusive thoughts in general, when you focus on them, it turns into a half a day project to try to make them go away. When you just look at it quickly and say, it doesn't serve me, it goes away. Like, I don't think about it again, it's in and out.
Strange, isn't it? And that's very, very well put. I think intrusive thoughts it's so incredibly common, but it's also so incredibly scary, right? In general, most people know what panic attacks are, but intrusive thoughts are not necessarily always known as to be anxiety. So, I think we talked about this as well. I had this experience back then. I'd never heard of the term intrusive thoughts, and I was just like making bread, whatever, and I had this knife. And I saw my cat. He's 18 years old, and I love him. But I saw him, and I had the knife, and I was like, "What if I stab my cat?" As if that be something I would just do without me wanting to do it. And this is the crazy thing about intrusive thoughts. So this is why they're so scary, because they don't match our personality, right? It's not something we want to do. You don't have an intrusive thought necessarily on what if I have a great day today, right? What if I make someone smile? That's not a recurring thought, because that's not a thought we push away. And exactly like you say, the more you push it away, the more it comes back, because basically you're telling to your nervous system that this thought is incredibly important. Your nervous system is scanning for danger, right? Your anxious brain is scanning for potential threats. And the one it kind of latches onto is obviously, as you said, the people closest to you in your case, most cases, it's like, your children who you love. And it's like, what if I do this? What if I do that? What if I lose control? Which is what anxiety can make you feel. And then the nervous system will say, this is dangerous. I need to think about this all the time, as if I can then stop and prevent it from doing. But it doesn't understand that the thought itself is what makes you freak out. And then when you actually go and you actually act on it, as in not you do what the thing says, but you try to prevent it by maybe not driving the car or actually sleeping in the living room, then it's kind of like saying to the nervous system, you were right. Thank you for giving me this thought. And it will say, I got you, Adam. I'm going to give you more of these thoughts. Basically, like a panic attack, intrusive thoughts are a manifestation of anxiety as well. Treat it as a thought and you don't go into thinking and engaging with it, it goes away. Right? If you just don't care about the thought as much, you're like, oh, that's a crazy thought. That's a funny. I have crazy, funny thoughts even today, right? But I don't recognize it, I don't even notice it, or I kind of laugh at it. I'm like, oh, that's funny, or that's strange. I don't even pay attention to it, because you're like, is it productive? That's basically what you ask yourself. Is this actually productive? Is it helpful thinking, or can I do something else? How did that evolve? Now you've worked on it more, and you worked on anxiety. Did you notice the intrusive thoughts dying down, going away, or morphing, or how did that go on your journey? Because they can sometimes be quite persistent. Did you notice that as well in your recovery journey?
I even still to this day notice that, like, when you're stressed, it doesn't necessarily push you to anxiety anymore, but stress in general will still kind of stir them up.
Yeah.
It's just, it really comes down to mindset. When it gets to the point where, like, you just don't give them the power, they stir up, sure. Some days are, more stressful with work, more stressful with the kids. And, those days, maybe you don't get as good a sleep. Those are the days where, you might get these random intrusive thoughts, but you take their power away and they don't mean anything. And I believe you even said it, when you're crossing a bridge, every human has thought, well, I wonder if I jump. That doesn't mean you're going to do it, but everybody has the thought,
Yes.
It really comes down to that, mindset is everything, you have the power to change. Everybody has the power to change. You just have to put the work in. You have
I
to
love that.
want it bad enough. I was reading this book that says we live in 6-month cycles. So if you can change your mindset and really put in the work for that 6 months, then the next 6 months is better. Every 6 months, it gets a little better and a little better. And eventually,
Love that.
I'll just put this all behind me.
In terms of, because before with the intrusive thoughts, you slept in the living room, you maybe avoided driving, or you had the soda cans and everything. How is that looking for you right now? Is that still something you do, or has that changed ever since you know how to deal with anxiety?
Yeah, I drive anywhere I want to go now. Like, panic is a thing in the past for driving. I take the kids wherever, and that doesn't mean that I don't get the random anxiety, spin up when somebody pulls out in front of me or something, but I don't need this soda can anymore. I also used to have this thing where it helped me living in Minnesota, because obviously the cold really, stops anxiety. Like, when you're driving down the freeway in January with your head out the window because the cold air blowing on your face, stops panic. It looks ridiculous, but
Did you do
I'm
that?
back to.
Did you drive with your head
I
out the
did.
window?
I did.
Love
Yep.
that.
With all 3 of the kids in the car, I just stuck my head out the window. But in the moment, you got to do what you got
Oh
to do,
yeah,
apparently,
I've done some crazy stuff as well.
Yeah. But yeah, I just, I don't have any issues driving anywhere anymore. I'm back to sleeping in my bedroom, you know.
It's not like just the thought of I need to go to the toilet, and then I go to the toilet. This is not the
Right.
same thing. This is like the option is there because on the news there has unfortunately been people who have hurt their children, right? And
Right.
you're like, and then you hear about it, and you're like, oh, they had this psychosis or whatever, and then the brain will go. Choo. Is that possible? I didn't even know it existed, that I could do that. Do people do these things? And then it starts worrying about it. Like, if you didn't know it was possible to hurt your children, then you wouldn't even think about it. But it kind of latches on to that. What changed for you the more you understood how anxiety works, just within the first couple of weeks of my program?
I think that's what makes your program special, is like, when you look at other programs, they don't talk about what anxiety is or where it comes from or what the body is doing. They talk about just tools. Sure, you can breathe all you want, but until you understand how anxiety works, breath work is great in the moment, but it's not going to fix you. It's a Band-Aid,
Yeah.
So for me, that's really what helped, is you explained what anxiety is, why it happens. Once the brain, and it's weird, once the brain understands how anxiety works, it starts to, you start to notice the pattern, pick up on the stuff. And that's really kind of what starts you getting out of the loop. Kind of going back to like what you said, that first conversation where we had, you told me you're not crazy, you know, because if you were crazy, you wouldn't know it. So that week, I kind of had this odd situation is, you know, I was out shopping and there was a car alarm going off in the lot. And every time the horn would beep, this guy standing on the sidewalk would scream and mumble and say weird things. And that's when I said, this is what Jort was talking about. This guy is screaming and doing odd stuff, but to him, that is completely normal. So now that's when it clicked, you know, I'm not crazy, because if I was crazy, I wouldn't know it.
Exactly. And you wouldn't be worried about it.
Right. It'd be normal. Your brain wouldn't be thinking, what if I went crazy? It's just like that. Understanding what anxiety is what, you know, and then putting in the work is what's going to get you out of it. And 100% your program is going to get anybody out of it if they're willing to put in the work.
I love that. And how did it feel for you? Because, you know, I agree with you. And I think it's very good that you point out that you have to do the work. Because I know it's not very like, I know like the most interesting thing for me to kind of go out on the internet and say is do this. You don't have to do anything. This is a magic pill, overnight fix, do this, you know, whatever, which is quick and, you know, easy and cheap, right? But that is obviously not possible. We know it. And I think even people who are still in the struggle may actually logically or subconsciously kind of feel that might be true. How was that for you? How much of an effort was it for you? How did the journey look? Because you had to put in some work every week. Obviously, you followed the program every week, and then you were on the community asking questions and everything. How would you describe it if you look back at the effort you had to put in?
So it's very accumulative. Like in the beginning, you know, it's very much baby steps, you know. There is no upward trajectory in getting yourself out of the loop. You're going to have good days. You're going to have really bad days. You might have a day where it's a huge setback and you're thinking this isn't working anymore, so you give up. Don't give up. Don't give up on yourself. You're not broken. You can get through this. Over time, you know, the baby steps turn into bigger steps, and then pretty soon you're running, you know. I was very much emotionally numb. I wouldn't say depressed, but like when your body's stressed to the point where, you know, it's constantly under threat, it just shuts your emotions off because you don't need to be happy to survive. You don't need joy to, you know, to survive. Your brain isn't looking for joy. It's looking to save your life from that hidden tiger in the bush. Once you get over the initial, you know, I would say the first 8 weeks were kind of just back and forth. Then you start gaining momentum. You know, you might have 2 or 3 good days, and then maybe the bad day isn't as bad. And it probably took me 2 months, I'd say a solid 2 months, and the panic was pretty much under control. You know, it wasn't gone, but it was to the point where my toolbox and, you know, understanding the loop was strong enough to get me out of the panic to where it didn't interfere with, you know, my life. You know, did I still have panic when I drove? Sure. It didn't stop me from driving though. You know,
Well, that's
it
it.
didn't feel good, you know, and I
Yes.
didn't enjoy it. It doesn't feel good. It's not enjoyable, but you do it anyway.
That's an important part, by the way, for everyone, anyone's listening, watching. That's an important part because one of, you know, part of the effort you have to put in eventually is actually applying, is implementation. Because it's not just about knowledge. It's very important. This is also what you said rightly on. It's baby steps. You know, you start with the baby steps, getting your education, getting the toolbox filled so you can bring that with you. But eventually it's about, you know, living your life as much as you can with small steps, sure. But you decided, look, I'm going to drive. And if a panic attack hits, I got my toolbox with me and I'm going to respond correctly.
Right.
And some days are great. You celebrate. Some days are tough. How did that go for you? Did you consciously practice, you know, those 5 steps, that response? Did you actually do like exposure exercise where you went out, or how did that practice look for you?
One thing with people with anxiety is once they start to have a good day or 2, 3 good days, they automatically stop their programs, or, they just assume that it's over, and then the bad day comes, and then they're back into the program. And I would say the biggest thing for anybody is consistency. Whether you're having a good day or a bad day, just stay consistent. Like, follow the program, follow the modules. Even if it's a good day, take the 10, 15 minutes every day, no matter what, to complete a module, to do some sort of, work.
Yes.
Consistency is the only way out.
How did you manage to stay consistent? How did you manage to stay on top of things or be disciplined and even push through the initial fear of going driving or going out or dealing with intrusive thoughts, knowing that is very scary and unpleasant? How did you get yourself to that point and keep yourself there?
I think I was just tired of it. When I finally found you and your program, I just was at that point where I just didn't want to live like that anymore. It shrunk my world down so small. And like, when you're in that loop, it almost seems like normal to you. You don't understand, like, you've isolated yourself from your family, from your friends. Like, life has now just become a routine. You're following the same way to go to work, same way coming back from work. You even notice that your meals have become routine. There's no spontaneity in your life anymore. Like, that's really what it got down to, is like, I just was so tired of living like that, not having any fun, no joy. And that's another thing. Like, when we talked about, I asked you in that call about emotional numbness, and you're like, yeah, you were stuck with that too.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say last month was the first month I felt joy. Like, I have not felt joy in 15 years. Like, I didn't even know what that was anymore. It's been so long that, I just was going through life, stuck in my little rut. And when joy came along, I'm not gonna lie, it brought anxiety with it for a second, because I'm like, what is this? It caught me by surprise. I was at work and I was laughing with a coworker and I had a smile on my face. You feel it in your body, like, this is happiness. And my brain was like, for a second, anxiety ramped. I'm like, what is this? What are we feeling? Something's wrong. And I stopped and I'm like, this is joy.
Wow.
This is happiness. This is what we want. Like, I haven't felt this in forever. I almost cried.
You're making me emotional, man. I'm almost tearing up
like,
here, because that's like 15 years. Wow.
Joy has been coming. I don't feel it every day, but every couple days. But I know this is this 6-month cycle, like we talked about. And my next 6 months, joy is going to come every other day. And then after that, joy is going to come every day. And that's just,
I love that.
I'm choking up here.
Yeah, me too, man. That really moved me, because this is we always talk about being calm and being free, but I don't think we talk much about having joy, being happy, being in the present. And that is like, and listening to you just now made me realize how much I feel joy. Not every day, because it's a roller coaster, but in general, and how life was like a routine with the same meals, even, or the same things, and no adventure. And I'm hearing you say it, I'm thinking to my life right now. I'm like, man, I resonate with that a lot. And it's I'm getting emotional a little bit, because it's so beautiful to hear you say, in all those years you rarely felt or didn't feel any joy, and now you got it, and it's kind of like random, and it's kind of maybe increasing your anxiety, because like, what's going on? Is this good? Is this bad? We don't know how to deal with it. And you're going to get more of that, because the nervous system is settled down, and there's more, as you said, room for joy, for happiness, because it's not in survival mode all the time. And you deserve it, man, because you've worked. Everyone deserves it, and you especially, because you've worked so hard for it.
Yeah.
In general, how would you say is your life looking right now? Now you kind of recovered. Now you've gone through the anxiety recovery journey. How's your life looking at the moment?
It's good. Like, I'm very optimistic. looking forward to, you know, growing my career, trying to find a bigger house for my kids, you know, just enjoying them. For so long, you know, like you say, you just go through the motions. So now it's just enjoying where you're at in life, you know, participating with them in sports instead of just standing in the corner, you know. It really comes down to that. Like there's there's no room for anxiety when there's joy in your life. And that's really the goal at the end of the day. Anxiety is there to keep you safe when somebody runs that stoplight, but at the end of the day, there's no room for anxiety with joy.
Wow. Beautiful. How do you feel as a dad now? How's it changed now? Now you're free.
To be honest with you, I feel kind of guilty. Like looking back, you know, and now there's so many things I missed out on because of it. Like taking them on vacations, doing stuff. That's another thing that kind of pulls me back into the loop as well. It's like anxiety had such a control on me. Like I missed out on so much when they were very little, like taking them to the, you know, pumpkin patches or just doing that kind of stuff with them. So now it's, hey, Dad, can we go do this? Sure, let's go. Gonna go get myself a pair of hockey skates and get on the ice with them, you know? There's just, I just can't focus on the past because I can't change it,
Exactly.
you know? So now it's just, what can I do to make their lives better for the future?
And that is so true. The more you focus on what you cannot control, cannot change, the more you're gonna get stuck in everything. The past is the past. And sure, look, and I even have this. My struggle is like 6 years, and I feel like I lost a lot, and I've given up on a lot and everything. But if I think back of it too much, I just get frustrated. I'm like, why didn't I know all this stuff earlier? Why didn't I do my research? You can beat yourself up all day, but in the end, you did it when the pain was high enough. And unfortunately, that's often where it has to get to for us to actually do the hard things instead of the quick fixes that we all have tried. I like to think of it this way: it shows up in your path in your life whenever you are ready for it, and you know it's proven to be true for both of us, because you're right here now telling me you get yourself a pair of ice skates and you go, and you know there's no way to make up for lost time or change the past, but you are here now and you've learned one of the biggest lessons in life, I think, is how to deal with fear, because fear's all around us. It's what the, you know, some of the economy drives on to, right? A lot of marketing drives on fear and everything. It's a big part of being human is fear. And that is something you would be able to pass on to your children, which will make, you know, all those years definitely seem a lot more worth it, because that is, I think, one of the biggest and most beautiful things to pass on. Whereas we cannot change the past, you have stepped in and changed your future, and that is incredible, which you're now sharing with all of us. That is amazing, because I'm sure you're going to inspire, you know, with this video, even you're inspiring lots of other people to actually also take that step. What would you actually say to someone else who's watching this, who's maybe terrified of their intrusive thoughts or having some kind of health anxiety or whatever, fear of driving, panic attacks, whatever it is? What would you want them to know?
I would say, like we talked about, you're not broken, you're not crazy. We're all a lot stronger than we think. But you have to look inside. You have to find your purpose. You have to understand what anxiety is and where it comes from to truly defeat it. You know, the breathing exercises are great. All the other tools, that's exactly what they are. They're tools, but you have to understand where it comes from first, you know, because that is the biggest thing with your program, is the understanding. That is what's going to get you through. That's what's going to make the changes. You know, once you understand like what's driving it, that's where you can fix it. Because, you know, physical sensations are, you know, we all have them. It's just you never noticed them before. You know, you stubbed your toe and sure, it hurt in the moment, but you forgot about it. Anxiety isn't like that. And that's where the problem comes in with physical sensations, because you're constantly scanning for them. You're constantly on the lookout for them. And that's one thing that I noticed the most when I was in the cycle is when you're healthy and you're normal and you're going through your day to day, there isn't a lot of chatter going on upstairs. You're just in the moment, doing your thing. But when you're caught in the loop, it's crazy to look back and think about how often you're talking to yourself and the chatter upstairs of like, oh, this hurts. What's this? What's this sensation? Why am I cold? Why am I hot? I'm feeling dizzy. What is this? It really is just about once you figure out the understanding or understand where anxiety is coming from and why your body is doing what it's doing, that's where you can start to put the work in. And that's why your program is so special compared to the others, because you dive deep into the understanding. You get to the root of anxiety, get to that root cause, and follow Jort's program, and it will get you out of it. I promise. I never thought in 15 plus years of struggle, I thought this was my life. I could breathe and do the other stuff and try supplements, and sure, it gave me some relief, but it was always there. It just got to, I don't know, probably week 10 of your program is when the switch just finally flipped. Did anxiety go away when the switch flipped? No, but it gave me the power to control it instead of the other way around. I'm very much into the 6-month cycles now. So this 6 months is great. My next 6 months is going to be better. I just know it.
What would you say to someone who feels like they're a special case, that this won't work for them? Do you have anything to say to them?
I promise you it will work, because I felt the same way. I felt nothing was going to fix this, that there was something wrong with me. The doctors just missed it. I truly believed that, and it's not the case. We're all special. I won't say we're not special, but there's no special case when it comes to anxiety. We can all get through it. I promise you that, no matter what. Like, just put the work in. At the end of the day, you just put in the work, be consistent, and you'll get through it. There's no doubt in my mind, if people follow your program, they can't get out of it.
Before we wrap up, what will be one quick tip you would give someone who's having intrusive thoughts specifically?
I would say just take them for what they are. Don't be hard on yourself, and don't try to push them away. Just look at them, and I know it's hard, because in the beginning I thought the same thing. Let's just sit in the thought, and sitting in that thought drove panic. But just look at them for what they are, and give them the 5 seconds. Look at them as, how does this serve me? Like, how does it benefit me? And then look around. Your subconscious is constantly scanning for stimuli, what you see, what you hear, so talking to yourself in your mind never really had the impact of saying your words out loud. So talk to yourself, tell yourself you're safe, tell yourself that this intrusive thought is not who you are, whether you're thinking of stabbing your cat or harming your kid. Say it out loud, like, I'm not that person. I appreciate the thought, but it does not serve me. Say it out loud so your subconscious can hear it. Because eventually your subconscious will stop sending those thoughts. But don't push them away, and don't try to focus on something else. Just talk yourself through them, and you'll get through it. I promise.
I love that. Beautiful. Is there anything you want to add there, Adam, before we wrap up? Anything that comes to mind?
I think we got it pretty well covered. I just really appreciate the time you put into this program, and just the time that you spend helping people. Like, you truly are a special person.
Well, thank you so much, man.
I believe, what you believe in, God or whatever. I believe you were put on my path for a purpose.
Wow.
Like, I found you when I needed you the most. And I truly appreciate you.
Well, likewise, man. You're, as I said, you're an inspiration. You're incredibly courageous and brave. You're a great dad, I'm sure. And you're doing the same today. You're showing up on someone's path right now today. The person that's watching this, and I also believe the same thing. I believe that I couldn't see this obviously in the midst of it, but I had to go through this to now make it my life and my profession and my job. And these are my favorite parts of the job, to speak to people who have seen grow and who have seen do the hard thing and do what's tough and taking responsibility for their lives, not beating themselves up, but taking responsibility, saying, look, these 6 months I'm gonna get through this. I'm gonna work on this. I'm gonna make it my mission. And then in the next 6 months will look different, and the next 6 months will look different, and the next ones. And yeah, man, you're an incredible inspiration. I want to thank you for your time today and having this chat with me. And keep me posted on how everything's going, and send me some photos of you with your hockey shoes and you on the hockey fields.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Adam. I really appreciate you.